We'll stay with this breaking news story. SABC News Senior Reporter Chriselda Lewis has been attending that particular briefing on the recent developments around IDAC. And Chriselda, you do have the man that has the mammoth task right now of making sure that that 6-month deadline he actually does meet.
Well, that's right, Bongewe, and it seems that heads have already started to roll surrounding the alleged rot in the investigating directorate against corruption. We heard just a little bit earlier on this evening that the chief investigator at IDAC, Perumal, together with 2 other employees, Sunil Berukan and Brian Padiachi, have been suspended. And the minister and the national director of public prosecutions, of course, giving that 6 months turnaround time for the institution, which seemingly has been compromised by what we've heard. So you'd recall that today IDAC's state advocate or state attorney in this instance, Chriselda Lewis, had told the commission that Johnson had launched an attack using IDAC against the suspended National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemola and others. Now the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Andy Mutibi, says Masemola's case and others will go on review. I'll speak to him in just about a moment regarding that. So we also asked whether Johnson is off the hook and whether she could possibly face criminal charges. Those are some of the questions I'll pose to him. But he did say earlier there is a common thread on how she and others will be held accountable, but also a policy review could also be on the cards. You would have heard a little bit earlier on the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development saying a review of the NPA Act, of course, that is underway, and that the head of IDAC should not be a permanent position, but should be something where a term is attached to it. Let me bring in now the National Director of Public Prosecutions, that is Advocate Andy Mutibi. NTPP, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We appreciate your time. It's been a rough couple of days for IDAC in that, most of the testimony that was heard seems to suggest an institution that has been heavily compromised from the top.
Yeah. Look, as we indicated in the media briefing session, that IDAC remains a very important entity of government. Its establishment had a purpose, and that purpose still remains, to focus on investigating serious and complex crimes, fraud, forgery, and others. And its focus has been to look at the outcomes of Zondo Commission. It also had to look at the outcomes of the Mumpati Commission. It also had the responsibility to look at the outcomes of the Nugent Commission. And when I look at the cases on the case book of IDAC, there are some of those cases. Some are in the courts and so on. So we need to make sure that IDAC continues to focus on its mandate in terms of the legislation, right? So where we sit now, the turnaround that we are implementing is to ensure that we maintain that focus of IDAC. We have to determine where they have veered of their mandate and ensure that we correct that. From a people's perspective, we have to make sure that if there are those individuals or officers where there's evidence pointing to wrongdoing, we have to make sure that there's accountability. We've already started that to ensure that we retain the accountability levels. I have had the opportunity to meet with the IDAC staff, and my observation is that really they are a committed members of staff, right? As we speak today, there's really quite a few that have been appointed, and quite senior. You're right, quite senior. But the process of dealing and making sure that they're accountable is going to help us deal with the accountability levels, and ensure that the entity is maintained with its integrity to ensure that it focuses on its work on hand.
Advocate Matibi, you did speak about focus, but that focus seems to have veered. Just looking at the testimony of the IDAC state attorney today, where she alleged, massive interference by the now former head of IDAC, Advocate Andrea Johnson, issues relating to intimidation within the workplace, issues relating to a work ethic which she said she did not go ahead with. I mean, could she even possibly face some form of accountability, given that she's even resigned now, if it is found that there is a need for that to happen?
But as I mentioned, the accountability spectrum is quite wide, right? She has resigned. She's no longer an employee. So an employer-employee relations has been terminated. You can't discipline her as an employee. But there's other processes to hold her to account. If there's evidence pointing that she has committed criminal action, we'll pursue. She will be pursued criminally. And as I mentioned up there, there's one case at least that I've mentioned that we are aware of. It's been publicly reported at Madlanga Commission. That case will be investigated. We've provided a prosecutor to guide the investigation, and once it's complete, the docket will be presented at an appropriate level for decision. So that's the criminal side. There's a civil leg of it. We will go through the report whenever it becomes available to really assess, what kind of civil action, if any, should be taken. And then there's regulatory and professional, right? She has already been referred, as I've picked up by some of the organizations, to the Legal Practice Council. She'll be dealt with there as a professional. Of course, I didn't have because I was working the whole day, I never had the opportunity to listen. But we have someone there from NPA who's sitting there. We'll get a report, and that is in the interest of ensuring that we don't ultimately wait for the report of Madlanga itself, where we've got evidence that we can use. We need to take immediate action.
Just last question, Advocate Matibi. Also allegations from today's testimony that the institution, or IDAC itself, was being used as an organization to target certain generals within the South African police service. Now, one of the cases that you said which is under review relates to the now suspended National Police Commissioner, General Fani Masimula. Just confirmation once again that that is one of the cases that is under review, and perhaps can you share others with us?
Right. The cases that we have publicly announced that they are under review is the cases relating to CI, which is crime intelligence, where General Kumalo, I think it's Brigadier Mukwele, and the others. I don't have all the names now. Those we have pronounced that we have reviewed them, and we have withdrawn those cases, albeit provisional, because we're still looking at some of the outstanding aspects of the matters. Once we are done, we'll come back to the public to say what is the outcome. Now, and then I can confirm, as you say, I can confirm that some of the cases that are under review includes General Masemula's matter. We have followed that, and I received the report from the Madlanga Commission that there's still this view around, whether the Public Finance Management Act charge should stand or should not stand. That part will be looked at, right? And an appropriate decision will be made.
Advocate Matibi, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it. Thanks indeed. The National Director of Public Prosecutions there, Advocate Andy Matibi, who, of course, with a media briefing with the Justice Minister, Mameloko Kubai, speaking about issues pertaining to IDAC and in fact, I think quite importantly as well, is that in the next week we are likely to have an acting head of IDAC. That has also been announced. The vetting process, we understand, is currently underway, and a little bird somewhere tells me that there might have been the presence of that person who might possibly take over that position in the next week or so. But certainly a fundamental issue is coming out of that, and that in the next week we're likely to have an acting head of IDAC. A number of suspensions already have taken place. The advocate, Andrea Johnson, is not yet out of the woods. If there are issues pertaining to criminal action that needs to be taken against her, the NDPP says that would be perused as well, and a number of cases are under review at this particular time, including that of the suspended National Police Commissioner General Fanny Masemola.
All right, Chriselda Lewis there, and as you say, Chriselda, that that person could have potentially been in the room. Whoever they are, they've got their work cut out for them, because certainly there's a lot to do as far as this particular institution is concerned. And Chriselda, they're mentioning some of those who we've seen action against them. You can see on the side of your screens there, Dylan Perumal is the chief investigator, who's now on suspension. There's also Sunil Balachan as well as Brian Pareachi, and a lot of focus on this particular institution to see then what happens next with some of what we are listening to in the Matlaka Commission. Also expecting that tomorrow the witness that is brought before the Commission is potentially going to be dealing with the developments in IDAC.